Hello, I'm Jennie Rayment, and today I'm going to show you how you can take 4 squares of fabric, 2 in one colour, 2 in another colour, and make the design I have in front of me. It's really easy. I've got 4 squares in front of me. I've got 2 7-inch ones in cream and 2 7-inch ones in red. I'm going to take one of the cream ones and one of the red ones and put them right sides together. Now, whichever of the 2 squares is the lighter colour, turn that side uppermost, because you're going to draw a diagonal line corner to corner right the way across the 2 squares. What you draw the line with is irrelevant, because you're actually going to cut it in the end. Having drawn the line, I would like you to sew a 1/4 inch either side of the drawn line, as there is on this particular example. Now, if you can't do a 1/4 inch easily, you can always take your rotary cutting acrylic template, place the 1/4 inch line on the central line and draw a 1/4 inch either side. When you've done it to one side of the line, you can flip it round and draw it on the other side of the line. Once you have done that, you're going to stitch, as shown, either side of that drawn line a 1/4 inch away. When you've done that to one set of squares, I'd like you to do exactly the same thing to the other set of squares. So I stitched either side of the drawn line. I'm now going to cut the drawn line. So put your template on the drawn line, rotary cutter, straight up the middle. Try not to wobble. When you've done that, can you, helps having your blade on your cutter, can you open and press the back seam nice and flat so it resembles this? And you need to do that with all the sets, so you will end up with 4 squares that resemble the ones I have in front of me. We're now going to arrange these into a pinwheel. I always find a pinwheel quite difficult to do, but if you put one on top of the other and give it a 1/4 turn going round clockwise, it does seem to help. There we go. And there is a pinwheel. Once you've got the pinwheel, we're going to sew the squares together. You're going to sew those 2 together and those 2 together, and they'll look something like this when you've done it. Here we have 2 sets of squares stitched together. Now, ideally and hopefully, in the very centre, where the 2 diagonal seams cross, and between the cross of the seams and the edge of the fabric, there should be a 1/4 inch. Now, the reason for pressing the seams open and flat is not only to get rid of the bulk, because if you press it all to one side, you've got 3 layers one side and only 1 the other, but also gives you a clue as to where the top of the points are on the right side, because you can see the V in the stitching just there. Once you've got both pieces done, you're going to put the 2 pieces together, match up the seams in the middle, so all the way along here, going exactly through the base of those points. And with luck, when you open it out, you should end up with an accurate pinwheel that resembles this. Now, the problem with the pinwheel at this moment in time is it's a little too big, because it has to be cut back to something that is easily divisible by 3. And my block measures just over 12.5 inches. I'm going to cut it back to being 12. Various ways you can do it. You can put a square on top and cut it back to being 12. You could take the ordinary rotary cutting ruler, put it on with the 6-inch line in the middle and trim the various bits off. If you don't have any of those tools, then use the cutting mat. Put the centre seam on a line on the cutting mat that you can remember. Measure 6 inches from the centre, which takes you to over here. 10 to 16 is 6 inches. Trim the excess part of the fabric off. Flip the block round. Realign that seam on the same measurement as before, back on the 10 line again. Trim off the other side. And then when you've done it to the opposite sides, flip it round and do it again. So on the 10 line, and we want 6, it has to be divisible by 3. Chop up there, and then finally round the other way and cut it one last time. So it's on the 10 line, measuring the 6 inches, and there we have an accurate square. At this stage now, you're going to cut it up yet again, and we can begin to divide the 12 by 3, which makes I can hear you say 4 inches. So working from one side, it matters not. You are going to cut the block back into 4-inch strips. So I'm measuring 4 inches in from that end, and I'm going to cut up there. Take that piece away, measure another 4 inches, and there it is, and cut up there. When you've got the 3 strips, you're going to repeat the exercise yet again. I'll start with the centre one. Again, measuring 4 inches in from the edge, and cut. Centre here, and cut. So there's 2 of my sections, or sorry, 3 of my sections, and we're going to do it with the remaining 2 strips, 4 inches. Just watch, think before you cut. 1, 2, that's another lot, and then finally the last strip, measure 4 inches, cut, measure 4 inches, cut. At this stage now you can have fun and you can play. That will be possibly the one in the centre. Now I could say to myself, I'm going to have white bits all the way around it. Like that. And perhaps white bits on the corners. The wonderful thing about patchwork is you can play, and if you didn't like that, you could turn these pieces round, and those pieces round, and then you could turn these pieces round, and those pieces round. You can have all sorts of different designs by simply playing with the pieces. When you've decided your final arrangement, you're going to sew it together. Top tip, don't sew it together as 3 rows of 3, because the problem then is you'll have to wriggle this line to match those seams up. And ditto with this one. I personally prefer to sew 2 together and then join those 2 together. That seam in the centre is easy. It's basically a square. Then if you join these 2 together and pop it on there, that's not difficult either, because again, it's the same as stitching 4 squares together. Then you've only got 1 seam on the bottom to wriggle. When you've done all that, press your seams open and flat, and depending on how you arranged it, you could have one that was like that, you could have one that was like that, you could have one that was like that, and you could have one that was like that. It's a really easy block to do, and all you did was take 4 squares